discussion of conspiracy theories, strategy of New World Order resistance, high-profile court cases in the news, and interviews with expert guests and authors on these topics and more. It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, private investigator Ed Opperman, and this show is brought to you by Audible.com. That's right. Go to audibletrial.com/Opperman Report. You go there, you sign up for free, you get a free audio book, and it helps support the show. Okay, tonight. Hey, by the way, I want to dedicate tonight's show to Diamond Joe over at Talk Superstation, who just got married tonight. I hope he's not missing in the show. He's going to miss out on my show for his wedding. But congratulations, Joe. Good luck to you in the future. God bless you, your marriage there, and thank God for that. Tonight we are live on TalkSuperstation.com, public streaming radio network, Awake Radio US, Awake Radio UK, WolfSpiritRadio.com, 1800 Online, Shazaz Radio, Just Us Radio Network, Scottish Sovereigns on the Lam, my radio stream. Also, we're on TuneIn. And then also you can find us on Spreaker, YouTube, and iHeartRadio. So when you listen to those stations, and I list them out every week, go and check out those stations. If you like what you hear tonight, go check out the other stations because they have a lot of similar type stuff. We're also replayed throughout the week on High Point Radio, 1700 AM and 100.5 FM, which is all over New Jersey, New York, and Pennsylvania. We're replayed tomorrow morning on Talk Superstation. Then also Sunday morning on Penny Entertainment on Blog Talk Radio. Cave Radio Broadcasting, they play us twice a week. Go check them out. Para X, 7 p.m. Saturday night. One of the best chat rooms that I've ever seen out there. Para X Radio. It's a CBS radio network. 7 p.m. Saturday nights. Check them out. Then let's see, what else? Late Night in the Midlands, another one of my favorite stations. 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, Tuesday afternoons. FPRNradio.com. Monday to Friday, 10 a.m. Every single day, just about. Then you can find us on Spreaker, TuneIn, Stitcher. We're on Stitcher.com as well. YouTube and iHeart. Oh boy. Tonight, we have with us a returning guest. Really tough to book this guy, man. He goes from one show to the next. He just did. John, how much time do you just do on this other show?
About an hour.
Oh, that's not so bad. Okay, we got John Potash, one of my favorite guests. He's been here a couple of times. It's like family. He's written the book, The FBI War on Tupac Shakur and Black Leaders, U.S. Intelligence's Murderous Targeting of Tupac, MLK, Malcolm, Panthers, Hendrix, Marley, rappers, and linked ethnic leftists. But his brand new book that just came out is John-potash-drugs as weapons against us. The CIA's murderous targeting of SDS, Students for Democratic Society, Panthers, Hendrix, Lennon, Cobain, Tupac, and other leftists. John, are you there?
Yeah, thanks for having me on again, Ed. And sorry to put you through all those long subtitles.
Yeah, I know, man. You got the longest. I think you break the record. I've noticed a lot of guests, I guess they try and put all those keywords in their book title.
Right.
Yeah, I know. What are you going to do, right? So, John, tell us about yourself. What have you been up to? And let's get into the book.
Yeah, well, I've been doing work as a counselor still. I've been counseling people with mental health issues and addictions for over 25 years, and still doing it. The books don't pay our rent, of course. So, but people stay interested in that first book, and that's very nice. People keep buying it, so it does. It does offer a little help here and there. And this next book was actually the first book I had started on. Around 1991, I started researching drugs as weapons against us, the theme of it. And the Tupac book was a bit of a tangent from that. So I was glad to get back to the original theme and incorporate, of course, Tupac's part of the next book, but with a little bit of a different angle on it, obviously. So I'm just glad to finally get it out with this Trying Day Publishing, and they did really good work on it, and I'm happy about it. So, I know I was actually talking to Dave McGowan just before he went to the hospital, sadly enough, and his publisher out of England just didn't seem to give him as good of a deals as I got with Trying Day, so I was lucky. So I'm glad to get this out, and now I'm just starting to get the word out there with people like yourself, like great interviewers like yourself, Ed.
Yeah, right. Okay, so Trying Day is Chris Milligan, right?
Yeah.
We've had Chris on the show. We've had a bunch of Trying Day authors on as well.
Yeah, I'm sorry about the phone ring.
That's okay.
Hopefully my wife get that. I'll try to turn this off somehow. I'm so bad with technology. I don't even know how to turn off the ringer on phones. But I'll try to get this. I can't get it out of
the bill collector's tracking John Potash down. He's like, what here?
Sorry, guys. Take these out of the room. Okay.
Yeah, don't sweat it, man. Yeah,
all phones out of the room now. There's no more ringing to interrupt this, Ed. So Chris is interesting because his father was part of the CIA, he said.
Right.
And his father left the CIA, I think it was in 1959 or 60 or so. And he said that around 1969, his father told him that, my agency's drugging your whole generation, and kind of admitted to him a number of stuff. And he said some kind of loyalty agreement or a non-disclosure agreement was up by around 1970, and he could actually tell his son some of the stuff that was going on that that he did in the agency. And so that's why when I showed my original manuscript to Chris was like, "Wow, my father told me about this, but you're one of the first ones to put it all in there in this fashion." So he was happy about it.
Well, it's good that they're treating you good over there, Trying Day, because we actually got an email from Jessica at Booth Media, who's
okay.
saying, "Hey, you should have this guy John Potash on your show." And I said, "Who?" I said, "Who?" Yeah, she emailed me today trying to book you.
That's funny.
Yeah, I know. Okay, my friend. So, let's get the rundown on this. I know a lot of people have been complimenting your book on how well researched it is.
Thanks a lot.
Kara is a mutual friend of ours.
Yeah.
And she wrote a little blurb on the little. What did she say about it?
Yeah, she. What did she say back here? She says, both well-researched and an exhilarating read. Drugs as Weapons Against Us exposes the dark history of the state's use of drugs as both a tool of imperialism abroad and social control at home. Yeah, she's chair of the sociology department at California State University, Dominguez Hills.
Yeah, very impressive. I got to have her on the show.
She's a good woman.
Yeah. Okay, so give us the whole history, because everybody knows about how from the opium days and all that kind of stuff. It launched the pirates and everything, pretty much. It seems like our whole economy from the start has been drug-driven.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible how when I started researching this, I found that the opium shipping families who were joined with the British East India Company became some of the wealthiest families in the world. And you can see that by the fact of two of the largest banks in the world are HSBC in Europe, which stands for Hong Kong Shanghai Banking Corporation, because that was the main places they were shipping out of, was that southwest China corner, which is right next to right around the Golden Triangle area of China, where Vietnam is and all. And so they were getting loads of opium out of there, and they fought two opium wars with China. When China tried to ban opium, they fought wars to make them, force them to allow opium into their population, to basically what Karl Marx said, opiate the masses, to control and exploit them and exploit their resources and their people. And so, but I argue and show evidence of that they were actually also bring the opium into poor English communities when there was labor riots in England to try to quell the English communities, poor English communities, and doing the same, of course, in the United States. And opium addiction rose in a huge way when there was serious activist unrest in the United States around, the women's suffragist movement, for example, and around labor unrest. The opiate use would rise, and because more opium kept coming in to the United States, and I showed the same thing was happening with cocaine too. Coke used to be legal, and it was spread through Coca-Cola products, and so these families became incredibly wealthy, and they started secret societies at the Ivy League colleges, such as Skull and Bones. The top opium trafficking family, the Russells, started Skull and Bones, At Harvard, it was the porcelain club that they used to joke was the pork or pig club. Princeton had it. Most of them had these secret societies. And when these people graduated from these secret societies, they would give them the equivalent of about $220,000. So that's how they start off their career, with a gift of $220,000. So of course they did real well for themselves after that. And they, some of these people that benefited from this huge, wealth of opium created wealth, were the Rockefellers, the J.P. Morgan family, the Julius Pierpont Morgan. The Pierponts were intermarried with the Russells. The Carnegies, most of the wealthiest families in the world benefited from this opium wealth. And I argue and show the evidence that they continued in the opium trade and the drug trade up until now.
Yeah, there would be no reason, no motivation for them to stop.
Right. No, yeah, of course. They kept making such huge money off it. And there's another aspect of how they make so much money off is the liquid cash they get from the laundering of the money just increases stock value by huge amounts. So there's a lot of different ways they make money off this.
So then, moving forward, what's the next stage of the story?
So the next stage, that's all kind of in the first chapter about how they kind of the eugenics philosophy, which was a big movement, and how they worked with, they actually helped fund the rise of the Nazis, and then worked with Nazi scientists and Nazi spies in Latin America.
Wait a second.
Nazi scientists.
You're saying that these same drug dealers, these smugglers,
yeah,
were also eugenicists.
Yes, they were the leading eugenicists. They actually they started the eugenics movement in a place called Cold Spring Harbor, and then after World War II, they continued. They started the MK Ultra program, which was the use of drugs as weapons against this program, in the same Cold Spring Harbor laboratory as they had the eugenics movement in. So they used the Nazi scientists with operations like Paperclip that saved hundreds of Nazi scientists, and brought them into that program because they had already been experimenting with psychedelics on people in concentration camps in Nazi Germany. So then they just brought that same research over and brought it to Cold Spring Harbor.
Hey, you know what I found out? I recently interviewed somebody who's in a position to know. Her identity is private for the moment. But what she taught me is that besides Operation Paperclip, these same Nazis, when they came over in these programs, they're the ones that started the Food and Drug Administration, too.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and pharmaceuticals and stuff, and all this crap that's in our diet. Yeah,
I mean, they're so intertwined, some of these government agencies, with the U.S. intelligence agencies. It's incredible. It's really sad and scary. But so, yeah, I mean, they had Nazis down in Latin America, setting up cocaine trafficking operations down there, and kind of causing coups. They had cocaine coups in Bolivia. That's what they were dubbed, where the Nazis would team up with cocaine warlords. Basically, these people are trafficking cocaine down there, and the CIA would help them in overthrowing any kind of form of real governments or leftist governments. They were behind the coup against Salvador Allende, and so they were a huge part of the whole Operation Condor, which was an assassination operation that was active. It was active in about 7 to 9 different Latin American countries. That was centered in Chile and Argentina, but it traveled around the world, killing Latin American leftists. So I'll bring you up to the MK Ultras. The MK Ultra is the second chapter of my book, and really launches the book because they experiment with so many drugs to be used as warfare. Not just abroad, because they did have like a psychedelic hit list to dose Castro, to dose Che Guevara, to dose Nasser in Egypt, and other left wing kind of leaders around the world, but also against American communities. I argue, and I show the evidence of.
Wait, were they successful in dosing Castro?
I'm not sure. I would imagine, since they tried to kill him at least a dozen times, as admitted by U.S. Congress, they probably did dose him at some point, but I'm not sure. You know, they
you probably had some speech that night, man.
Yeah, right.
It probably went on 24 hours. And what about Che and Allende? You think they were dosed as well?
Well, I don't know about Allende, but
Okay.
I know Che, they had on that psychedelic hit list. Whether they actually did it to him or not, I don't know.
Okay.
But I include Che in the book because one of the main guys that was that targeted Che was a guy who they called the Butcher of Lyon, and is Klaus Barbie,
Right.
and he led the operation against Che Guevara, and he also led the first cocaine coup in Bolivia, where he overthrew a government. But he was setting up things in Bolivia for decades around cocaine trafficking, work against leftists, and the CIA had him help them hunt down Che Guevara.
Isn't that the guy that he cut off Che's hands and he kept them in his freezer?
It possibly could be. I haven't heard that story. It's an interesting story.
Listen to the show with Daniel Hopsicker, because he knew Barry Seal and stuff like that. He knew all those guys, and he told some very interesting stories about that Operation 40, I guess it was called, where all those assassins were running around during that whole period of time.
Okay. Yeah, it's interesting. And I didn't hear that, but the use of the drugs as weapons against us in the United States is more interesting, I bet, to a lot of listeners, because I show the evidence of how they targeted musicians, particularly leftist musicians, and they target them in different ways. One way is that they use them to promote drugs. They got them using drugs and got them promoting drugs, but they also target them to hurt their minds with acid and other drugs and hurt their lives and control them better. And so, for example, well, with Paul Robeson, it was just to hurt his mind. They dosed his drinks with a psychedelic, and he didn't know what it was. He didn't know what was going on, and then they convinced him to go into a hospital where they gave him electric shock treatment. And that's according to Paul Robeson's son, who was also dosed when he went to try to save his father.
Really?
Yeah, and he said that in a number of different speeches, yeah. And so they know they used a psychedelic. They don't know if it was LSD or BZ, but he knows it was a psychedelic. So either way, so then I also show the evidence that the first person to give Elvis drugs was this manager, Colonel Tom Parker. And he started giving him, Elvis was only 21 years old when Colonel Tom Parker kind of inserted himself as his manager, started giving him tons of uppers and downers. And then they drafted Elvis, and John Lennon said that Elvis basically, they kept asking John Lennon for a quote when Elvis died, and John Lennon said, if you want to know when Elvis died, in my mind, Elvis died when they got him into the army. After that, he was just the living dead. And I show that there's so many operations, CIA operations going on in Germany. It started in the U.S. with this Colonel Tom Parker getting to be his manager and giving him all these drugs. Then they get him over to Germany, and they put all kinds of agents around him. And there's a lot of MKUltra operations going on in Germany, we know, at that time in the 50s, according to different CIA scientists. And then when he came back, they wouldn't allow him to choose his own film. He didn't do a live kind of performance for about a decade. He was just completely controlled. His whole life was controlled. And then, of course, he died of uppers and downers. Very
interesting. But coincidentally, I just reached out to Priscilla Presley about coming on the show. So we're looking forward to that. Let's see what she has to say about all this. Hey, what does she fit into this? What do you think? Anything?
I don't know anything about Priscilla Presley. I'm sorry about that.
That's okay.
But it just moved on to the '60s musicians, though. Mick Jagger got his first hit of acid from an undercover FBI agent, a guy named David Schneiderman, or also been called David Jove. According to London press reports, he was an undercover FBI agent, and this happened after A.E. Hotchner, who was the longtime editor for Ernest Hemingway, had written a book about called "Blown Away" about the Rolling Stones. And in that, he says that the assistant deputy director of the CIA, Robert Lashbrook, was in London distributing LSD to his agents and telling them to get as many musicians using LSD as possible. Okay, and that was part of MK Ultra. They were doing that all over the place. And what I argue on a show is that they were trying to get these musicians using LSD to promote LSD, just in the same way you get LeBron James wearing Nike shoes to promote Nike shoes. And that's the way that those were our role models. And they would make it seem like everyone's using acid. You should you should eat acid too. And so Mick Jagger resisted for a while because Ashbrook started that in about 1965. So Jagger got his first hit of acid from an undercover agent, then he was framed, and then under the legal authorities' thumb. And John Lennon got his first hit of acid. He was dosed by George Harrison's dentist at a party, at a dinner in 1965. It was just three couples. George Harrison's dentist had George and John with their partners over for dinner, and then dosed their drinks with acid. And John Lennon was extremely mad about it. George Harrison didn't even know what LSD was at that time because it wasn't popular in Britain at that time. And later, I show, if you look at Dave McGowan's work and other people's work, is just the fact they kind of they made the scene so popular in the United States with acid that later John Lennon, thought, well, maybe it's not that bad, and kept eating acid. But he thought he was losing his mind on acid for a while there. He actually considered tree panning and drilling holes into his head to expand his mind at one point.
Oh, brother.
So it really messed his head up a bit, yeah.
Now, what did you come up with on Leary?
Well, Leary actually admitted working for the CIA in different interviews. Now, I argue, he first got CIA front company money to experiment with mushrooms, psychedelic mushrooms at Harvard. And that was being given out to over 100 colleges. All this money to experiment with mushrooms or with acid at different colleges. So at that point, he unknowingly was getting CIA grants and doing that kind of stuff. And a guy named Michael Hollingshead, who was a British, they call him a British propaganda agent. But I argue he was just British, CIA, British MK Ultra from probably the Tavistock Institute. Michael Hollingshead had already worked near the United Nations. He held parties right near the United Nations, got a lot of people over there from the UN, and covered everything with LSD, all his furniture with LSD, and got all the people that he invited to the party tripping. That's the kind of stuff he was doing. And then he takes a jar of acid, 10,000 hits of acid, to Harvard, visits Leary, and convinces Leary to try acid when Leary hadn't tried acid at that point. He was only working with psychedelic mushrooms. And Leary's colleague said that Hollingshead gave Leary a 3-day dose of acid, enough acid that had him tripping for 3 straight days. And so he totally, messed his mind up, and they said he was like he was just a puppy, a lap puppy to Hollingshead thereafter. But Hollingshead convinced, and Leary convinced them all to start eating acid and start using acid in their experiments at Harvard. And then Harvard kicked them out, but then they started, Mellon Hitchcock, the Mellon Hitchcock family, Peggy and William Billy Hitchcock, Mellon Hitchcock, funded Leary's group that was the international, it's called IFIF, something about psychedelic freedom, whatever it is. Some ridiculous group, but Mellon Hitchcock gave him his mansion in New York, in the county of New York City, and huge mansion, just gave it over to him. And they funded other places for Leary's group, and it kind of evolved into the Brotherhood of Eternal Love, that group. But they basically got people from New York City up there and to visit Leary, got people tripping from all walks of life, and I argue a lot of those people were activists. A lot of those people were musicians and were, role models for others. And there was a lot of MK Ultra scientists who were housing themselves at Leary's mansion, at that mansion that Leary kind of took over from Mellon Hitchcock. And so it was like a guinea pig farm right there. Yeah, and the same thing happened when in San Francisco, and I can describe that to you too.
It's always a good sign to look for, where's all this funding coming from? Someone gives this guy a mansion. Take the time to ask yourself, where's this coming from, Right.
Mellon Hitchcock, the Mellon family were involved in U.S. intelligence. They were owners of Mellon Bank and Gulf Oil. They were some of the richest, one of the richest families in the country.
And Leary, too, as well, most of his public life, he was out on bail facing charges.
Yeah, I mean, he actually admitted in later interviews to realizing and knowing he was working for the CIA when he was spreading acid, too. But and he ratted out the Weather Underground and got some of them arrested. When I used to hang out down at the Yippies in New York City, for one of the first things I said was, "Hey, how about Timothy Leary? What do you think of him?" And everyone said right away, this is back in 1979, says, "Oh, he's CIA. The guy's CIA. He's a rat. He's he's an informant." And so it was pretty much well known way back in that time. I'm glad they knew.
Yeah, and that whole story about where he is some story about where he got himself into a minimum security prison.
Yeah,
because he wrote the test. He wrote the psychological test himself, and since he knew how to take the test, they put him in a minimum security, and that he climbed out of a second-story window on a telephone pole wire and shimmied down a telephone pole. But the guys who picked him up says, "Oh no, he was sitting waiting there at the bus stop." So they probably just opened up the door and let him out.
Yeah, I don't know the specifics of how he got out, but I know the Weather Underground picked him up. Yeah, they say the Weather Underground picked him up from there, and it turns out it was actually Peggy Millen Hitchcock that funded the whole operation of him getting out there, and then they flew him to Algeria to visit with the Eldridge Cleaver in the Black Panthers in Exile chapter out there in Algiers, and so Eldridge Cleaver first accepted him because he was in solidarity with the Weather Underground, but then when he found out that Leary brought, I think it was either 20 or 30,000 hits of acid with him, he put him under house arrest and said, and hold a press conference and said, "This is what he brought to us, and I'm sorry that your leader's mind is blown, to the hippie community, but he's got to get out of here. He can't get us kicked out of this country." And I argue that Leary was trying to spread acid amongst the Panthers and amongst another country.
Wasn't Leary also socializing with people of the U.S. Embassy in Algiers?
I certainly believe it. I don't know for sure.
Yeah, okay.
But I believe it, yeah.
Oh, boy. Okay.
The CIA got him out of there, got him out of the Black Panthers in Algeria, headquarters, and flew him back, to other countries to safety.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I never heard that part. But yeah, but that makes sense because by that point he was turning everybody in. He was ratting everybody out. And he even wrote a letter to his wife at the time, or ex-wife at the time, telling her, "Hey, you should make a deal too and rat these people out because this is what I'm doing." And I've seen an interview with her where she talked about it.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, but the bigger thing about that is that, he's saying all over the country, tune in, turn on, drop out, and basically just telling activists to drop out.
Yeah.
Don't get involved in this stuff. Just escape with acid and other drugs. And a lot of people were doing that. And that's what that's what I show evidence of agents around Ken Kesey's acid tests. John Gittinger said in a legal deposition that him and two other scientists attended several of the acid tests. Early acid tests in San Francisco. And, Ken Kesey first went through an MK Ultra's kind of scientific program just to make a little money. But then I argue that they kind of manipulated him after he ate his first hits of acid. And they pretended like he was, they let him steal tons of acid from their hospital. Because they let him work there. He took tons of acid. They pretended like they let him, that he thought he was just stealing it and he just got the keys and was lucky. But they kept letting him steal it and kept letting him hold acid parties. In the same way, MK Ultra scientists were holding parties in New York. And it became bigger and bigger. And there's John Gittinger, one of the top MK Ultra CIA scientists there with two other, MK Ultra scientists at those parties. They get bigger and bigger. Ken Kesey decides after about the third acid test that he doesn't want to hold him anymore. He doesn't like him anymore. And he's going to preach to graduate from acid. And all of a sudden, he's arrested, and he can't be, part of it anymore. And then some other pranksters who have dubious histories because they were some of the first people in the Vietnam War, like high-level officers in the Vietnam War, they threw much bigger acid tests. and they called them the Trips Festival. And then they became the Beans, and then it became the huge rock concerts, of course, that you might have read about with some of the connections from Dave McGowan's book about weird scenes in the canyon. But there, in the Haight-Ashbury area, the book Acid Dreams, Martin Lee who founded Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting, found that there, he got CIA agents saying we had acid laboratories there. We also had, different hotspots. That we had so many agents there watching the scene. And so why they were just watching the scene and why they had part of underground acid laboratories, they don't explain why. But I argue they were doing that in different cities all over the country, like such as St. Mark's area of New York City.
Very interesting. Okay, you know what? We got to take a break. Let's take a commercial break, and we'll be right back after this with more of John Potash. I got so many questions that I want to keep interrupting. Okay.
No problem. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I'll talk slow.
No, man. No, this is great information. I'm learning a ton of stuff here, and I know some of these guys. John Potash, Drugs as Weapons Against Us. The CIA's murderous targeting of SDS, Panthers, Hendrix, Lennon, Cobain, Tupac, and other leftists. This is all the stuff we talk about all the time, guys. This is our niche here, guys. Go to the Opperman Report blog, blogspot.com. There's a link to this book. You can go right there, pick it up on Amazon. And we'll be right back with more of John Potash right after this. And now a word from our sponsors. We are listener-sponsored, and we appreciate your donations. If you like the show, please visit oppermanreport.com and click on the donate button. Or you can donate directly through PayPal at oppermanreport@gmail.com. We have Mike Ray of infinityhomeplans.com. He's the host of Parlay over at CJ Mars Radio, Thursday evenings, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you need custom home designs, stock plans, or 3D work, he's your one-stop shop for home design and drafting needs. Mike Gray at infinityhomeplans.com. At infinityhomeplans.com. If you're looking for essential oils, stop by and check out Essentially Tanning on Facebook. She's young, living essential oils independent distributor. 100% therapeutic grade oils. They help support the body's natural functions. Visit the website posted on Essentially Tammy to see the current deals, or email at jocotami, JOCATAMI@yahoo.com, or call 352-239-8546. 352-239-8546. Hey, if you need a private investigator, go to my website, emailreviewer.com. We offer asset searches, locates, skip tracing, adoption investigations, online infidelity investigations. We can recover deleted text messages from a cell phone or trace an email to online dating websites. That's emailreviewer.com. Or you can call 800-572-9762. 800-572-9762 or email reviewer.com, FBI website. Pacific West Bamboo. It's your premier source for construction and craft-grade bamboo poles. They're announcing their latest project with EcoHead Event Sanitation, making bamboo composting bathrooms and porta potties. Their first display will be at the Lucidity Festival in Santa Ynez, California, April 11th to the 13th. Come by and say hi and see what you can build with bamboo. Contact them for any kind of event planning, display building. If you need construction grade or craft grade bamboo products, call Amanda at 503-839-8126, 503-839-8126, or visit PacificWestBamboo.com, their brand new website. We're also sponsored by the New World Mexican Women. This is a rural Mexican craft women's cooperative. They are traditional makers of fine handcrafted, authentic jewelry. They use beautiful stone mosaics and Pacific blue Abilene inlay. They have a wonderful book of love letters written to their men in the United States, begging them to return to their families in Mexico. But they've written a new book, and it's it's about a young girl that falls in love with a rodeo bull rider and runs off with him without telling her family. It's a beautiful love story called Azuquena Part 1, Azuquena to the Rodeo. You can find their books and jewelry by clicking on their banner ad at oppermanreport.com or by Googling New World Mexican Women. You can also promote your business or website right here and have your ad played all over the world 7 days a week by emailing oppermanreport@gmail.com or calling 800-572-9762. Okay, welcome back to the Opperman Report. I am your host, Private Investigator Ed Opperman. This show is brought to you by Audible.com. Go to audibletrial.com/Opperman Report. Get yourself a free audiobook. Don't forget, guys, we are listener-sponsored, so we do appreciate your donations. You can always make a donation to oppermanreport@gmail.com through PayPal. And we have the new members section. All set up with brand new content, additional content that's not ever been played before live on the air or ever replayed on YouTube or Spreaker anywhere. It's only available in the members section at oppermanreport.com. And please don't forget our friend Dave McGowan. He's a good friend of the show. He's a good friend to this topic. He's a hero of this topic, really. You know, one of the founding fathers in this discussion that we're having tonight. His website is called Center for an Informed America. And if you just Google Center for an Informed America, you'll find his website. And there's a donate button at the top of that website. Now, the reason why we're asking for donations for Dave is because he was just diagnosed with very, very serious stage 4 cancer. Now, he's in treatment, and we hear good news every now and then that he's getting better. But the thing is while he's in the hospital with this cancer, he can't work. He's a working man. Okay, no one gave us a mansion up in upstate New York like they give Timothy Leary. We're on the other side, other guys that don't get the mansion. Okay, so Dave McGowan needs our help, and even on top of this, his brother this week, someone came along and slashed the tires on his car. His brother is taking care of Dave. Now he's not working either, because the whole family is in crisis, and it's time like this that we need to rally around together. And join forces, in support, in prayer, in support, and in financial support. This is what they need. They don't need meals sent to their home. They don't need any kind. They need financial support to pay their rent, to keep roofs over their head, and to keep their cars moving, and get back and forth to this chemotherapy. Because there's no way that these guys have any kind of insurance to ever cover this. So this is a kind of devastating kind of crisis that we need your help. Center for an Informed America, Dave McGowan. You Google any of those topics. And you can always find the link on my Facebook page as well. Dave's a really good friend of the show, and we love you, Dave, if you're out there listening. But we are here tonight with John Potash, who, thank God, is in good health. Another guy out there fighting the good fight. He's the author of Drugs as Weapons Against Us, the CIA's murderous targeting of SDS, Panthers, Hendrix, Lennon, Cobain, Tupac, and other leftists. John, you were talking about the electric Kool-Aid acid test. And Kinsey and those characters, the merry pranksters and the...
Kinsey, right.
Right. Okay. Now, I knew one of those guys, okay?
Which one did you know?
Michael Moran.
Yeah, I've heard his name. I just don't know much about him.
Okay. Interesting guy, because I only met him a couple of times, and he remembered me, and he remembered a lot of stuff about me, way more than he should have. Yeah, looking back now, it makes me very nervous. Now, looking at it with a whole different perspective, something was going on.
Right.
And he was hooked up with that guy, Baba Ramdas. Again, another guy who was trying to get everybody off into the meditation and tune out, and also stuff. Which brings up a question. Not to get off too far off a tangent, but what do you think about the legalization of marijuana? And so many people seem to think it's awakening us and freeing our minds, and it's part of the revolution. What do you think?
I don't have a strong opinion about it. In some ways, I think it's good that if they decriminalize weed, that's fine because they're definitely using it to imprison so many people. On the other hand, the fact that it's kind of leading more people to get high more often and turning them into house cats versus strong activists, that's a concern. So I kind of I'm a little middle of the road about it now. I'd like to see most drugs decriminalized and treated, but at the same time, I don't want to see people using drugs in any way any more than recreationally, and even recreationally, only weed that isn't dangerous, but synthetic weed is dangerous. It's making people lose their minds. I was seeing them in my inpatient facility when I was working inpatient for addictions and mental health. We were getting people that were using synthetic marijuana coming in, and they were paranoid and psychotic for days, if not weeks. So it's some of that stuff can be really dangerous, and you got to watch out what's put in your weed. So there is concerns about like that, and of course the psychedelics. I show studies that acid can cause some mild damage, and I felt like it damaged me in the half dozen hits I used in college. Some of my grades dropped drastically and all, but loads of studies were showing damage at times right after it was made illegal, when the medical field was embarrassed by the fact that it was legal and their psychiatrists were trying to use it regularly for therapy before they made it illegal. So all these reports of it that's actually causing some damage is embarrassing to the community. And so the whole idea of mind expansion is ridiculous. And anyone who's seen a deadhead who's just tripped too much can see there's something a little wrong there. People, sad enough, we come out with a little less than we came in with after acid. And took me a year to get my grades back up, and I felt like I lost some abilities I'll never get back from acid, sad to say.
I agree with you 100%, because if you get busted, they got those charges hanging over you. They can control you. Or if you're just zombied out and sitting in your basement smoking pot all day long, you're not doing anything to help anybody, really.
Yeah.
Now, this brings up a
truly
question.
keep it to once a month. That's fine. You're
right.
not a problem. But,
yeah, come by my house once a month. But that brings up a question now, because now I know that if I had a substance problem, I'd be worried about where I went to. I wouldn't want to go to Betty Ford, because you hear all those stories about mind control going on in those places. Now, you're in that business. Where would I go? You're a guy I trust. Okay, I'm in trouble. I got an addiction. Where do I go?
Well, there's a few good places around here. Mountain Manor around here is pretty good. My nephew, I can't get into it. I'm trying to think of the good ones. Hazleton's good. Hazleton's a good one. What else? There's just a few that come to mind.
Okay, and those are on the East Coast.
Well, Mountain Manor's here on the East Coast. Hazleton's over in the Midwest. This is just a few that come to mind. I don't know a whole lot of. I know some Karen Foundation has a good clinic in Pennsylvania.
Okay, so back to the topic tonight of your book, Drugs as Weapons Against Us. We left off about the Kinsey area and the Merry Pranksters. So it's interesting. So I was analyzing San Francisco in a big way. At the same time that I was spending several years researching that, when I was I finished the manuscript and gave it to Trine Day, and around that time, Dave McGowan came out with his book, Weird Scenes Inside the Canyon, and he was analyzing the Los Angeles community. And it's interesting that the parallels between those two communities. Now nothing really quite matches the level of intensity of how many top American musicians were inside that Laurel Canyon. So that is a special case scenario. Now, what I did is I analyzed the amount of CIA agents and MKUltra scientists that were gathering in that San Francisco Bay community, Haight-Ashbury, and all around there. Dave saw the patterns of the families in Laurel Canyon, and in terms of them coming from military backgrounds, them being in the military, and then coming out and being instant rock stars. And it's it was a pretty incredible pattern, because it happened again and again and again. He shows with dozens of these guys.
So I think so. I ended up including his book in maybe a half dozen to a dozen pages of my 450-page book, because it just fits right in there. We were doing similar research, finding similar things going on. I just get a little bit more into the history of all the drugs, and he gets a little more into the history of the musicians. I'm sorry, go on.
Did you stumble on anything with Manson family? Because that guy Tex Watson, he was an interesting character. He came out of the military. And when he was running around with Manson, he had short hair. He had a crew cut, and then he took off out of town, and they were holding up his extradition. He had powerful people helping him stay out of this case, and he's kept his mouth shut all this time. Did you stumble on anything with them?
Yeah, well, I think Dave showed a little more about Manson family, but I argue what I show about the Manson family is that they were involved with the Process Church. Process Church, visited Manson in jail, and Process Church, according to a psychologist, gave a lecture at a conference, at a regional conference for counselors, and his lecture was about dissociative identity disorder and cults. And he says, in analyzing the Process Church and other cults, and the way that they're so systematic, the way they sexually abuse children, and they use the same techniques as the CIA, and it's just too methodical, and it's too widespread around the country that it must be a national program, right. And these must be front companies. These cults must be doing front work for the CIA and MKUltra program, because they're using the exact same methods, and it's a very interesting speech. And Jim Keith's Mind Control, Mass Control documented all that whole speech, and documented, all the ways that it's very similar, all the other evidence that backs up that speech. And so that's it. It leads us to believe that those Manson women, they weren't freaks of nature. They were part of the MKUltra program. And so at federal hearings in the 1990s, an important counselor brought two women she counseled to the federal hearings on radiation that Clinton had. It was actually Clinton's administration had. And you can see it on YouTube, and I have it sourced in my book. These women testified that from an early age, from anywhere from 3 to 7 years old on, they were sexually abused, they were physically abused, they were tortured, they were given psychedelic drugs to turn them into CIA, split their minds, first of all, and turn them into manipulated prostitutes and assassins for the CIA. And the counseling kind of deprogrammed them from that and got their minds a little bit back together, from the dissociative identity disorder, what they used to call multiple personality disorder. And as a counselor, I know that's the way you split someone's mind, is you get them from that vulnerable age between 2 and 7 years old. If you get their minds then with sexual and physical abuse, that's how you can do it.
Okay, I got two questions for you. One, are you a member of the Maury Terry group with me on Facebook?
I am, yeah.
Okay, then you've seen that INS document that he puts up there that talks about how the Process Church, the members of the Manson family in jail, were sewing the Process emblem into their blankets. And
that's interesting. I missed that.
I'll send it to you. I take credit for it now that I got my hands on it. It's mine. But I got it from Maury Terry, who found this. It's an INS document. And also, too, he talks about how Sirhan Sirhan, the assassin of Bobby Kennedy, went to parties with the Process Church. And also, he talks about how Papa John Phillips was funding the Process Church in California.
Makes total sense.
Yeah. Now, the other question is, I want to ask you real quick before I forget, is that woman you talked about, the psychiatrist, is she available to do a show?
Oh, God. Last time I tried to find out more about her, I heard she, I don't know if she's still alive.
Okay.
I wish she was. You got to see, I don't know if you've ever seen her on YouTube, but you should. You can just go into the back of my book, and you can actually, for the Google books, you can just click on a link in my footnotes, and it instantly comes up the video of her testifying to the federal, in the federal hearings, and two of her, counseling clients testifying to what happened, what went on with them. And they actually named some of these MKUltra scientists, like that I named in my book: John Gittinger, Sidney Gottlieb, the director of MKUltra, name them as the people that were actually doing some of the torture and sexual abuse against them and giving them the psychedelics and all that. Yeah.
Amazing. See that? So many of these people, you try and get them as a guest, and then you find out they're dead. And it cannot be a coincidence. It just cannot be. That they're all just dying of natural causes.
I don't know. I don't know what happened to her. I don't know if she's dead or I'm not sure. I heard. I think she is dead, but I'm not positive.
Yeah. Well, we'll try and find her.
Okay.
Okay. What's next?
Yeah. Well, so of course, the more interesting thing, I think, to a lot of readers would probably be the musicians that I highlight. Of course, Hendrix, Lennon, Cobain, Tupac, and other activists. So I did I mention to you about the Rolling Stones and what Hotchner said about the acid and all?
You mentioned that about what's his name? Not Keith Richards. Who's
Mick Jagger?
Mick Jagger getting dosed. Yeah, but
yeah. So he got dosed, and so meanwhile, so Lashbrook, as I said, the assistant deputy director of the CIA, was getting the acid around everywhere to all the British musicians, and so Brian Jones got heavily into the drugs then too. And the thing is, Brian Jones and Mick Jagger were the most outspoken against the Vietnam War and were the ones actually attended anti-war rallies. And Brian Jones was the founder of the Rolling Stones, who's considered their best musician. So after they get them, using some drugs, they also frame them. Mick Jagger actually got a cop on film, planting drugs in his car. But they were still under legal authority's thumb, Brian Jones in particular, because when the Stones went to tour America, they wouldn't allow Brian Jones to have a visa to get out of England. But so Brian Jones they kind of had to separate from Brian Jones with the band. But Jones started sobering up at that point and got away from drugs, and then called Jimmy, according to A.E. Hotchner in his book Blown Away, he called John Lennon and called Jimi Hendrix, who was friends with both of them, and convinced them to form a super group, which would have been an incredible activist group, incredible group in general. And after that, a friend of Brian Jones says he was at his house. He left his house to go pick up a friend in town, and then when he came back, the kind of house was blocked off by cars, and there was some kind of party there when there wasn't supposed to be a party. He couldn't get in. He tried to get around in the back. He looked on some hill over at the pool. He saw someone being drowned in Brian Jones' pool. And then some guy pops up out of the woods and says, "Get out of here or else you're next." And knew his name. This was actually a member of the Guinness family that said all this. And because he was the friend of Brian Jones. And so a friend was with him. He said he never saw the friend again. And then, he was scared to say anything until years later. But that was the person being drowned was Brian Jones, of course. And so he witnessed Brian Jones's murder. And I argue it's because he was sobering up and he was going to form this super group and was a danger, to U.S. authorities. To U.S. and British intelligence. So this is what generally happens is they manipulate them into using drugs to promote drugs, but when they start sobering up and are into activism, they do away with them when they try to preach the opposite or when they get turn into opposite role models. And so you can see that with a number of these musicians.
Or like you said, they plant drugs on them like they did with Jagger.
Right.
And also too, it was who's that guy? G. Gordon Liddy, who was involved in the bust of Leary with the marijuana, when he got busted with a little joint of marijuana in a potted plant inside his home.
That was it. I don't even know what to make of G. Gordon Liddy and Larry, because they kind of did a tour together.
Yeah.
So they're in the same boat. They're in the same little hotbed of U.S. intelligence, if you ask me. G. Gordon Liddy was a Nixon plumber too.
Yeah, well, just imagine if you or I were to go on a tour with G. Gordon Liddy. Right. It's not going to work, man. We're not going to get along, But right. But good old Timothy Leary did. Oh my God. Okay, so what do you got next?
But so then you got Hendrix was was not actually an activist until Martin Luther King died. And Martin Luther King was assassinated, and then that really depressed Jimi Hendrix. And Black Panthers had asked him for help before that, and he didn't want to help him. But after MLK died, he dedicated his last album to the Black Panthers. He started saying in interviews, "You got to get your Black Panthers to protect you." And he started forming an activist group, and he was going to make overtures to Bob Dylan to become part of his activist group, according to his ex-fiancée Monica Danneman. And meanwhile, an MI6 agent, Michael Jeffries, had inserted himself into Hendrix's life and proceeded to sabotage his career as best he could. And so when first thing, he had a mafia kidnap Hendrix, and then pretended to have larger mafia after 3 days, free Hendrix from that first mafia. And the FBI had Hendrix under regular surveillance. And there's loads of documents on Jimi Hendrix in the FBI files. But so Hendrix thinks that Mike Jeffries also, when Hendrix tried to do activist concerts, Jeffries kept trying to get him not to. And then when he finally did one, he dosed his drink with tons of psychedelics and messed up his guitar playing, and Hendrix got upset and ended the concert early. And so Hendrix finally fired Mike Jeffries, and within 48 hours of firing him, he died. And according to a roadie of Hendrix, he came out with a book within the last few years that says that Mike Jeffries actually admitted having Jimi Hendrix killed. And everyone knows when you're MI6 or CIA, you're MI6 or CIA for life. You're not former MI6.
Yeah, the whole Hendrix story deserves a whole show by itself. Because there's no doubt the people that were surrounding this guy, and I believe the person who killed Hendrix was involved in killing somebody else as well. Another rock star, no?
Well, there's always, with all of these guys, there's multiple people that die around them that are associated with them. It's sad to say. H1 Cobain, Tupac, Jimi Hendrix, and John Lennon. So many people died around them. With Tupac, just it seems like every few years another person that was close to him. Jimi Hendrix, a few people died around him too, sure, and Kurt Cobain, a few people close to him, died.
Oh boy. Okay, and also too the whole thing with the Cobain, and that also connects in our friend Hank Harrison, who was hooked up with all these guys. By the way, he told me that what his duty was around these characters was to bring them down from bad LSD trips. Yeah,
well, he did have he did start something around that, and that's an interesting thing. I don't know what to say about it. It's a good thing to do, of course. Yeah. He says that he was like in opposition of Owsley. He said Owsley was a conservative, super politically conservative guy, super wealthy guy, of course. His full name was really Augustus Owsley Stanley III, and he came from a super wealthy family. And Owsley tried to get the Grateful Dead to do conservative stuff and to get more into drugs. And Hank Harrison said he was trying to get the Dead to go the opposite way. But Harrison gave me very interesting information on Courtney Love. It appeared that she kind of had the same development as some of those, as likely some of those women in the Manson family,
right?
And those women that I told you about in those federal hearings, because her biological mother had a memoir saying that she thinks she was abused in childcare. She sent her to counseling at the age of 3, which is unbelievable. That's like an unbelievable age to go to counseling. Courtney Love sent Hank Harrison a letter saying that my counselors sexually abused me. And one of my counselors was also a romantic partner of my mother, Linda Carroll. And she also said in the letter when Courtney Love was 14 years old, trying to get Hank Harrison to get her out of juvenile detention center, that the counselors were giving me Secanols and Tuanols, and I showed that those were MK Ultra drugs to use for psychohypnosis. So it's a pattern you see that suggests that she went through the division of her mind, the dissociative identity disorder process, and by the time she was 16 years old, she was already a prostitute and heroin addict.
Well, did you know, back to her early life, did you know that in middle school she went to the Presidio Middle School?
Yeah, I remember talking to you about that. I talked to your friend about that.
Oh, Russell, yeah, what do you say? Yeah.
I did, yeah. And then so thanks for hooking me up with him. Yeah, he just knew she was there. And so Hank Harrison said he thinks she also might have been in Presidio, child care when she was much younger, too. And, of course, that's where the regular ritual sexual abuse was going on by that U.S. intelligence, that military psychological operations officer. I forgot his name now, but you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
He was working out of the Presidio and was caught doing that stuff in the Presidio.
Well, Colonel Michael Aquino, but I believe
that's his name, Michael Aquino.
He was never charged. And I believe he, as a matter of fact, of what I heard...
He was implicated but not charged, right?
Right. And who came in and cleared him of all those charges was none other than Rudy Giuliani.
Oh, wow. Really?
Yes. I know, right? You got to laugh.
God.
Because if you didn't, we'd all have pitchforks. Listen, we got to take a nice little another 5-minute break here.
Sure.
And then we'll be back with more of our friend here, John Potash, the author of Drugs as Weapons Against Us, the CIA's murderous targeting of SDS, Panthers, Hendrix, and Lennon. This is a nice 5-minute break, so you can go get a drink or whatever you want to do.
Thanks.
I hear you, man.
Thanks, Ed. It's fun
and
talking
now
to you.
I know, yeah, but they can hear us talking.
We are listener sponsored, and we
Okay.
appreciate the
All right,
donations.
I love it.
If you like the show, please visit oppermanreport.com and click on the donate button. Or you can donate directly through PayPal at oppermanreport@gmail.com. We have Mike Ray of infinityhomeplans.com. He's the host of Parlay over at CJ Mars Radio, Thursday evenings, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you need custom home designs, stock plans, or 3D work, he's your one-stop shop for home design and drafting needs. Mike Gray at infinityhomeplans.com. At infinityhomeplans.com. If you're looking for essential oils, stop by and check out Essentially Tammy on Facebook. She is Young Living Essential Oils Independent Distributor. Now, these are 100% therapeutic grade oils. They help support the body's natural functions. You can visit her website posted on Essentially Tammy to see the current deals, or email at JocoTammy, JoCaTammy.com, or call 352-239-8546. 352-239-8546. Hey, if you're a private investigator, go to my website, emailreviewer.com. We offer asset searches, locates, skip tracing, adoption investigations, online infidelity investigations. We can recover deleted text messages from a cell phone or trace an email to online dating websites to catch people cheating. That's emailrevealer.com, or you can call 800-572-9762. 800-572-9762 or emailrevealer.com. My website. Pacific West Bamboo. It's your premier source for construction and craft-grade bamboo poles. They're announcing their latest project with EcoHead Event Sanitation, making bamboo composting bathrooms and porta potties. Their first display will be at the Lucidity Festival in Santa Ynez, California, April 11th to the 13th. Come by and say hi and see what you can build with them. Contact them for any kind of event planning, display building. If you need construction grade or craft grade bamboo products, call Amanda at 503-839-8126, 503-839-8126, or visit PacificWestBamboo.com, their brand new website. We're also sponsored by the New World Mexican Women. This is a rural Mexican craft women's cooperative. They are traditional makers of fine handcrafted, authentic jewelry. They use beautiful stone mosaics, Pacific blue abalone inlay. They have a wonderful group of love letters written to the men in the United States begging them to return to their families in Mexico. But they've written a new book, and it's about a young girl that falls in love with a rodeo bull and runs off with him without telling her family. It's a beautiful love story called Azuquina Part 1, Azuquina to the Rodeo. You can find their books and jewelry by clicking on their banner ad at oppermanreport.com or by Googling New World Mexican Women. You can also promote your business or website right here and have your ad played all over the world 7 days a week by emailing oppermanreport@gmail.com or calling 800-572-9762.
Welcome back to the Opperman Report. I am your host, private investigator Ed Opperman. This show is brought to you by Audible.com. Go to audibletrial.com/Opperman Report and get yourself a free audiobook. And don't forget also, too, Dave McGowan's Center for an Informed America, Weird Scenes Behind the Canyon, Weird Scenes Inside the Canyon. And Dave is our good friend, and he's in trouble. He needs our help, so he has a PayPal button donation at the top of his website, the Center for an Informed America, to help him out with his medical expenses and living expenses while he's there in trouble. I hear you, John. We're here tonight, by the way, with John Potash, who's a really cool guy, one of my favorite guests. One of our most popular guests, as a matter of fact, too.
You're one of my favorite guys to talk to.
Thank you very much. And is the author of Drugs as Weapons Against Us, the CIA's murderous targeting of SDS, and blah, 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 a whole bunch of other people. But the thing is this, John, the thing is, I think one reason why we're getting so much pushback is because guys like you and me, and then McGowan, and Maury Terry, and Joe DeToma, and Cisco Streetlove, all these guys kind of met through the show, and we're all kind of in the background, and we're all kind of tuned into the same kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and noticing what's going on. And I talked about it on the air a couple of times, and I even put the pictures up on my Facebook. But when John mailed me a copy of his book, his last book, that box was ripped open in a way there's just no excuse for it. I get packages here all day long, the evidence that it's sealed with evidence tape, And, only a couple of times in my life have I had that kind of sabotage to a package come to me through the U.S. mail. And the other time was with the Sarah Palin case. So
wow. Ed, I didn't know that happened.
I told you last time, too. We talked.
I forgot. I'm sorry. That's I've heard that from a few different people, that my packages I tried to send to them, it's ripped open and the book's out of it,
Yeah, well, no, the book was in it. Everything was intact.
It was in it this time, yeah.
Yeah, but it happens to me, too. When I mail people an autographed book, half the time they don't get it, man. And I don't even question it. At the beginning, I thought, hey, they're trying to scam me out of a book. But now I realize this stuff gets lost.
Yeah, but they sometimes, actually it's happened when I've sent it to someone who's real high up in the industry. They get an open package without the book in it. But, regular people that I send books to, it doesn't, they usually get the book. It's not a problem.
Yeah, I hear you, man. Now, back to Courtney Love, though, when I did all this research on the Jeffrey Epstein case, it turns out as well, she was on that list, on his flight list, flying around on his private plane with those characters, Dershowitz and Prince Andrew, and the president of Israel, and
makes sense.
The president of Colombia, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so she was traveling. Hank Harrison said she was traveling around with 2 CIA agents when she was 16 years old. Oh, really? Yeah, she brought 1,000 hits of acid to Dublin when he was doing research in Dublin. First she's she gets hooked on heroin, and she's prostituting with a woman named Frenchie Marsan. That was a pseudonym that that Harrison used, but it's a prominent woman prominent madam in the San Francisco area that he knew, but he was scared to give her a real name. But he found out that she was prostituting to David Packard, the Assistant Secretary of Defense at one point, Hewlett Packard. Really? Fame, yeah. And so he tells me about that. And then in another biography of Courtney Love, James Moreland, Courtney Love's first husband, says that she told him that she was prostituting to Army generals in Alaska, too, when she was still a teenager. She was also prostituting for Asian mafia and in another biography, she admitted that she was prostituting in Taiwan before she, was out of her teen years. So this isn't just any normal, you develop a heroin problem and you you have to prostitute to get money for your heroin problem. This is high level prostitution to, top figures, top military figures. So that's what she was really about. When she was traveling with the CIA agents, that's when she had the 1,000 hits of acid. She brought that all to the London music scene in Manchester. It was a growing scene in Manchester, spreading drugs like crazy. And that scene, messing up that scene, having sex with, the drummer for the Pogues, and when he was married, and she got pregnant with his kid, and split his marriage. It just was wrecking havoc in the scene. And she does that in every city she goes to. She brings tons of drugs, spreading it out like candy. Who knows where she gets all the drugs? Practically, seemingly for free, and spreading around the Portland music scene and all these different music scenes, the LA music scene. She then hooks up with the top punk musician in LA, this James Moreland, and tries to control him. He thought he was marrying some punk feminist. It turns out she says she was like a right-wing Phyllis Diller, and saying that the army generals told her that the wars were good for us, and she would have him beat into submission if he tried to cross her, and then he just eventually divorced her. But that's what she was about, and so I argue and I show the evidence that she was, one of those dissociative identity disorder victims who was doing, whether she knew it or not, was doing the work of intelligence. And they inserted her into Kurt Cobain's life because they did psychological profiling of him, like they do many activists, and I show evidence of that happening in a number of situations. And he had a long-term stomach ailment that was severe stomach ailment. And people know that a tincture of opium helps solve, intestinal issues. Like Paregoric had that, a tincture of opium. And so he dabbled in heroin. They did 6 to 10 times in 4 years, from 1986 to 1990, according to his diaries. But she got him using daily, according to all his friends and associates, who said he was never a daily heroin user until he met her. She was inserted into his life when his album Nevermind was already rising in the charts rapidly, and he was becoming huge. And he also, of course, was very into left-wing activism, Kurt Cobain. And so she got him using heroin daily, promoting heroin at the same time that, the CIA was trafficking heroin out of the Afghanistan area, which was called the Golden Crescent of opium. Just similar to the Golden Triangle of opium in Vietnam, when we were trafficking heroin out of there, and opiates out of there, excuse me. And so I argue that they were having the supply come in with the CIA trafficking, but they needed to promote the demand. They needed to get the demand going, and so by getting people like Kurt Cobain using heroin, that was a promotion technique. In the same way that the undercover agent they had give Mick Jagger's first hit of acid, he was distributing lots of drugs, and he got Keith Richards on lots of drugs. This guy Dave Schneiderman, that MK Ultra agent. And so that's the way they do things. And so then when Cobain solved his stomach problem a year before he died, he actually started getting clean and sober. And that was shown by a toxicology report when he had that coma in Rome. And that coma was actually caused by Courtney Love's prescription Rohypnol, a sleep drug that you can get prescribed to you in London. And those are roofies, Rohypnol.
Yeah.
The date rape drug that makes you lose your memory of what happened beforehand. And I argue and show the evidence that she actually, gave him that and tried to kill him then. It was unsuccessful. But then, tried another time after that, or actually before that, she tried another time. But then finally, all the evidence shows that she, was successful in helping orchestrate his assassination or his murder when he, supposedly committed suicide. Now, there's a new movie coming out called Soaked in Bleach, which premieres in about 14 cities around the country on June 11th, and you can get it on Vimeo. And that shows all the expert evidence, giving their testimony, and it also has a docudrama, and has Courtney Love recorded saying some of the things she said around that provide the evidence that that Cobain was actually murdered. He didn't commit suicide. And we are good for, you probably know Cyril Wecht. He testifies in that movie and does a good job with that. And so it's pretty clear he was murdered, and she was let off, despite tons of evidence that she was involved. And so why was she let off, and why is there so much police cover-up of it? And and you can just see from there why.
Very interesting. She's also connected to this guy Sam Lufty.
I don't know Sam Lufty.
He was Britney Spears' manager when she was having her breakdown.
That's interesting, yeah.
Yeah, now he's her manager, or at least was a short while ago. And Courtney Love also, too, was inserted into the lives of Ozzy Osbourne's daughter when she was heavily addicted. They found all those pills under her bed.
Yeah, she's connected to so many heroin overdoses and heroin deaths in Seattle, and people in Seattle say there was nothing like that. There's nothing to the level of her before she came in. There was no.
Really?
You know, people were much more congenial before she went to the scene, and she caused. I mean, lots of Kristen Pfaff was likely murdered when she was trying to get out of that scene, and she was supposed to be in Kurt Cobain's band after he was actually breaking up Nirvana right before he died, and was going to form a new band with Kristen Pfaff. Kristen Pfaff had already exited Hole, she was trying to get out of Seattle. She had already moved back to her Minneapolis hometown, and was getting her stuff from Seattle when Courtney Love's band member Eric Erlandson was the last person seen with Kristen Pfaff, and she ended up with a hot shot overdose of heroin.
Really?
Yeah. And she was an amazing bass player. Kurt Cobain thought she was an amazing bass player, and she was credited with really breaking Hole out into the to get high on the music charts because of her great musical skills.
Yeah, I tried to get that soaked in bleach guy to come on the show, and I haven't had any success with that. I'd love to do a show. Yeah,
he seems like a real good guy, but and he's probably hopefully he's busy with other interviews, but I don't know. He may be shunned by the press a little bit. I'm not sure, but I also think he's a little scared to get involved in the way I'm expressing the situation because it's just he's probably getting enough flack just for coming out with what he's coming out with. So
I hear that, but last week I had on the FBI agent in charge of the anthrax investigation.
That's interesting. Oh yeah, that was interesting. So he came out with the fact that guy in Frederick actually could have been murdered. Is my understanding. Well, at least he said that there was a lot of incriminating evidence around what happened with that guy and that guy being framed, I think.
Well, we got into a lot of details about how flawed the investigation was from the start, how the investigation was hampered and stuff. He has a lawsuit going on for like $2.5 million, and everyone else involved in that case that sued the FBI has won. Because I think the FBI doesn't want what really happened to come out.
I've got some inside information on that too, but I can't really say it because it'd be breaking some confidentiality of people.
Gotcha. Okay.
Because that guy's in my Maryland area.
Very interesting.
So I know some stuff, but I can't really talk about it. Yeah. Sorry to say, I'll get myself in trouble.
I hear you, but it's a small world, It really is.
Yeah.
Okay, so what happens after, what's the next topic we got?
Well, of course, we've talked about Tupac Shakur a good bit, but it's incredible how much it continues, with people around him dying. But there's just there's so many different stories, of course, in my book. But Robert F. Kennedy, I've probably told you about too. The sad thing is what happened to Students for Democratic Society. I think, though, you probably know a good bit about Students for Democratic Society also. But they just, they were the largest student anti-war group of all time. And I believe that when they started getting into the psychedelics, they started losing, some emotional control. And they Bernadine Dohrn, as brilliant as she was, as great of a leader as she was, she acted rashly to, lead people away from that last, SDS convention, split the SDS in two. And granted, undercover agents helped, spark and provoke her to do that. But that was the end of a huge group that was doing good things. And then when she formed the Weather Underground, she was, I think Mark Rudd was close to her in doing that work with forming Weather Underground. But Rudd was anti-LSD. His whole Columbia SDS chapter was anti-LSD, explicitly anti-LSD, and said it was anti-revolutionary. And I show the evidence that an undercover agent had been had formed a splinter group from the Yippies. He called the group the Crazies. His name was George Demerly. He came out as an undercover agent in court, but it was his group that dosed the punch at a Columbia SDS party and got them all tripping for the first time. And so if they said they had fun at that party tripping, they decided they weren't going to be anti-acid anymore. But it was at that point that Mark Rudd started acting like ridiculous, and of course Bernie and Dorn started acting ridiculous at the first Weather Underground conference. She's lauding Charles Manson.
Oh, really?
And saying it's the year of the fork for the fork that a Manson follower put in pregnant Sharon Tate's belly.
How was Rudd acting ridiculous? Because I had him on my show. He was acting ridiculous.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think I'd like to think that Rudd's gotten a lot better since then. I mean, I've seen him speak. He seems better since then. I don't know, but at that time, they were stealing food from people on planes, and this is what they said. They were causing fist fights on stages of conferences,
right,
to show how tough he was, and telling people you better get your gun because you don't have a gun, you're not serious revolutionary. And there's a often quoted story how he was saying all this crazy stuff at a conference where Fred Hampton was, and he was trying to get everyone to go to Chicago to put on football helmets and fight the cops. And Fred Hampton said, "You're a motherfucking masochist," and punched him in the face. And so people just didn't take him seriously at that point on, even though he was a damn good organizer before he got so into the acid. And he was very inspiring and a great SDS chapter leader at Columbia until he got into the acid, when people started thinking he was ridiculous.
Very interesting, because he had some comments to say on the show that was very. We talked about it a little bit. He came on here and started saying he supported Obama because he was a cool black guy. Yeah.
That's absurd. Yeah,
yeah, it was very.
He may seem like a cool black guy. That's fine, but what's he do in office?
Oh my God.
It's ridiculous. Yeah, that's too bad that he's saying crap like that.
Yeah, I forget what the other comment too was, but it was just a very. It was kind of a hostile interview toward the end.
That's too bad. Yeah,
I know, as nice as I can be.
Yeah, I've rarely met a nicer interviewer, Ed.
Oh, thank you very much. Okay, well, we agree pretty much on everything. I don't think
sure.
Yeah. Oh my God. Okay, so now, what'd you come up with? Did you look into the Iran-Contra kind of stuff like that and all that?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I had to put the Iran-Contra stuff in there. I mean, because basically, George Bush Sr., it wasn't exactly the same situation as Dick Cheney and George Bush Jr., but it was similar because Ronald Reagan didn't like to work. And he wasn't a direct, he was a puppet of the oligarchs, but he wasn't a family member of the oligarchs.
Hey, he was married to a communist, too, don't forget.
Was he? It's fun.
Nancy Davis, yeah. The story is that she met Nancy Davis, met Nancy Reagan, met Ronald Reagan, because in the Screen Actors Guild, she was being portrayed as she was being pinned as a communist. So she went to the head of the Screen Actors Guild, Reagan, and said, "Hey, it's a different Nancy Davis." So he got her off the list, and he went to McCarthy. He said, No, it's a different Nancy Davis. But then later on, they went looking for the other Nancy Davis. She doesn't exist. There was a commie sleeping in the White House for many years, 8 years under Ronald Reagan, under the sheets there in the Lincoln bedroom.
Yeah, well, people say that, who was it, Hinckley that shot Reagan?
Yeah.
Yeah, they say Hinckley's dad, or I think it was his dad, that was having dinner with the Bushes, at around that same time that the son shot Reagan.
Yeah, and Hinckley too was involved in that World Vision Christian group, the missionary group that Mark David Chapman was involved in.
Right.
Yeah, there's ample evidence there, and also too Jodie Foster's in the mix,
Right, with some strange stuff, but basically, I mean, the Bush family is of course connected to the oligarchs, the drug trafficking oligarchs of the Rockefellers, Carnegies, Harrimans. It was Brown Brothers Harriman that was funding the Nazis during the rise of the Nazis and with the eugenics movement, and during World War II. And Prescott Bush was president of Brown Brothers Harriman. He was kind of more the figurehead, but he was the president, while Brown Brothers Harriman, that his families were the main people that owned it all. But so they go way back, and Bush descendants, of course, Bush Sr. and Bush Jr. are all just, part of that network, that oligarchy.
Yeah, and don't forget Marvin Bush and Neil Bush. Just the amount of theft in that family.
Oh, unbelievable! Silverado and all that crap. Yeah.
And even like the death of Marvin Bush's housekeeper.
Yeah, I haven't heard about that one.
Oh, and she died in front of his home because she ran over herself in her own car.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, but Bush Sr. was, he was head of the CIA in 1976. And under Reagan, he was considered running the National Security Council. And so he was running the Iran-Contra operations, the drug trafficking, the gun, running to the Contras against the Sandinistas and all that. He was the point person. And, and Clinton, of course, was president of Arkansas at a time when a lot of the trafficking of cocaine was coming through Mena, Arkansas. Yeah, that's where I think it was Barry Seal's plane was caught, and so they had an operation coming through Mena, and a lot of people say that Clinton had to know it was all going on because there was just so much going on there.
Yeah, he had to. First, he was the DA, then he was the state attorney general, and then he was the governor. So there's no way this could have gone on under his nose. Because a lot of people know about Barry Seal actually had a whole airport there where he did airplane repairs, and there's no way that could have gone on without the DA knowing.
Yeah, so that's how Clinton being connected. That's how so many the operations against Cobain and Tupac during Clinton years could happen. He's compromised. He's connected and he's compromised. There were some good things that happened under Clinton too, like those hearings I told you about with that counselor and those MK Ultra victims, but of course, there was also a lot of bad things around that, and I showed the evidence that they were trafficking the cocaine into the country, as Gary Webb pointed out, but they were also directing them into the black communities. And as a drug and alcohol counselor, it's so obvious. It's so incredibly directed into the black communities. Now it seems to be spread. Of course, it spreads into the white communities a bit, but I think that appears to be more collateral damage. But, of course, they're using it. They were more targeting the white communities with the weed and the acid and all. But it seemed like the heroin, the cocaine was more directed towards the black communities. And there's a lot of evidence to support that. I show the research and the findings about that.
Yeah, very interesting, too, that when Bush Jr. came into office, the first foreign leader that came to visit was Vicente Fox from Mexico. And all the smuggling went from Florida and Colombia through Mexico. Just suddenly one day it all just switched, and just went through Mexico, but no one knows why, of course.
Yeah. Well, one of the most interesting things about all that smuggling of the cocaine from Latin America is the fact that we were using Nazi assets down there to do a lot of that trafficking. Klaus Butcher Leon Barbie was, helped. He's the one that was credited with helping the CIA kill Che Guevara back in 1967. He worked with the cocaine trafficking drug lords to overthrow what they had what they called the cocaine coup in 1980 in Bolivia. And they actually planted a Nazi flag on a mountaintop, and they have a picture of that.
Wow.
In Covert Action Quarterly. And so he had a Nazi colony in Bolivia. And there was a similar Nazi colony in Chile. New York Times had a surprisingly extensive article in that Nazi colony in Chile. That was a Nazi doctor that started that colony, and they said that they had a country's worth of arms. They also had a country's worth. They had an intelligence community's worth of files on leftists. Because that was the center of Operation Condor. It was coming, it was like their own country within a country. They had their own airspace that Chile was not allowed to fly over, even though it was inside the country. The colony was huge, and some of what they were doing were MK Ultra operations inside the colony. They used a lot of their blonde-haired, blue-eyed kids for sex parties. And would frame and entrap a lot of politicians with these sex parties. It was really incredible stuff. But they actually had a number of these German colonies in various of these countries where they would, where the thousands of Nazis that they harbored that started these communities.
It's so fascinating that these elites, they will use their own kids. They put their own kids up for sale, and they throw them out to the wolves.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about the elites here as much. I do know, I just read that evidence about what was happening in, as I say, in the Latin American German colonies. But I heard some of that here too. I just don't know much about it.
Okay, real quick, let's take another break, another 4-minute break. We're here with John-Potash-drugs-as-weapons against us, the CIA's murderous targeting of SDS, Panthers, Hendrix, Lennon, Cobain, Tupac, and others. Don't forget his old book, the first book, The FBI War on Tupac Shakur and Black Leaders. U.S. Intelligence's murderous targeting of Tupac, MLK, Malcolm, Panthers, Hendrix, Marley, rappers, and linked ethnic leftists. And that first book, by the way, was a groundbreaking book. It was the first book to really come out about how the whole rap industry is under surveillance by FBI and COINTELPRO and all kind of infiltration and stuff.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, that was a groundbreaking book. So we'll be back with more of John Potash. By the way, if you guys want to call in with some questions, 702-605-4894, or you can Skype in at ed.opperman. We'll be right back after these messages. And now a word from our sponsors. We are listener-sponsored, and we appreciate your donations. If you like the show, please visit oppermanreport.com and click on the donate button. Or you can donate directly through PayPal at oppermanreport@gmail.com. We have Mike Gray of infinityhomeplans.com. He's the host of Parlay over at CJ Mars Radio, Thursday evenings, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you need custom home designs, stock plans, or 3D work, he's your one-stop shop for home design and drafting needs. Mike Gray at infinityhomeplans.com. At infinityhomeplans.com. Oils. Stop by and check out Essentially Tanning on Facebook. She's Young Living Essential Oils independent distributor. These are 100% therapeutic grade oils. They help support the body's natural functions. Visit her website posted on Essentially Tanning to see the current deals, or email at jocotami, JOCATAMI@yahoo.com, or call 352-239-8546. 352-239-8546. Hey, if you need a private investigator, go to my website, emailrevealer.com. We offer asset searches, locates, skip tracing, adoption investigations, online infidelity investigations. You can recover deleted text messages from a cell phone or trace an email to online dating websites to catch people cheating. That's emailrevealer.com, or you can call 800-572-9762. 800-572-9762 or emailrevealer.com, my PI website.
How are you, my love?
Okay.
Pacific West Bamboo. It's your premier source for construction and craft-grade bamboo poles. They're announcing their latest project with EcoHead Event Sanitation, making bamboo composting bathrooms and porta potties. Their first display will be at the Lucidity Festival in Santa Ynez, California, April 11th to the 13th. Come by and say hi and see what you can build with bamboo. Contact them.
I'm sorry.
Event
I hope
planning,
the listening audience can
if
hear
you
us.
need construction grade or craft grade bamboo products, call Amanda at 503-839-8126, 503-839-8126, or visit PacificWestBamboo.com, their brand new website. We're also sponsored by the New World Mexican Women. This is a rural Mexican craft women's cooperative. They are traditional makers of fine handcrafted, authentic jewelry. They use beautiful stone mosaics and Pacific blue Abilene inlay. They have a wonderful book of love letters written to their men in the United States, begging them to return to their families in Mexico.
but they've written a new book, and it's called. It's about a young girl that falls in love with a rodeo bull rider and runs off with him without telling her family. It's a beautiful love story called Azukina Part 1, Azukina to the Rodeo. You can find their books and jewelry by clicking on their banner ad at oppermanreport.com or by Googling New World Mexican Women. You can also promote your business or website right here and have your ad played all over the world 7 days a week by emailing oppermanreport@gmail.com or calling 800-572-9762.
Welcome back to the Opperman Report. I am your host, Private Investigator Ed Opperman. The show is brought to you by Audible.com. Go to Audible Trial. We go to audibletrial.com/Opperman Report. Get a free audiobook. Okay, we are here tonight with John Potash. He's the author of that historical book about Tupac Shakur, the FBI war on Tupac Shakur and black leaders, U.S. intelligence's murderous targeting of Tupac, MLK, Malcolm, Panthers, Hendrix, Marley, rappers, and linked ethnic leftists. His new book that just came out, I think I'm one of the first guys to get him on the show, on the air, to interview him about this new book, is John-Potash-Drugs-as-Weapons Against Us, the CIA's murderous targeting of SDS, Panthers, Hendrix, Lennon, Cobain, Tupac, and other leftists. John, what do you have on the Wu Tang Clan? Because I'm from Staten Island, you know.
Yeah, it was an interesting thing about Wu Tang Clan when the Village Voice had a cover article, and then where they said they revealed that a mafia guy named, I think his name was Michael Caruso,
okay,
had become a agent, like kind of an undercover agent for the FBI and the ATF, and been inserted as a manager for two of the members of the Wu Tang Clan. And so this guy actually had already been charged with high-level ecstasy trafficking. Okay, this guy was a serious ecstasy dealer, held raves around New York, getting ecstasy all over the place, but also sold it in bulk around. And the interesting history of ecstasy is the fact that it was an MK Ultra drug. And the head of chemical and biological warfare in the apartheid regime era of South Africa was ordering his assistant to manufacture a ton of ecstasy, and then was distributing it in the black community in South Africa. And I show studies that ecstasy causes some brain damage. It causes memory problems. It causes long-term depression. It's not just the fun party drug that people think it is. It's got some serious problems. And so here, I show the evidence that that was just one case, and there was a number of other cases where federal agents were infiltrating groups and actually being part of spreading ecstasy and trying to get rappers and rap groups and rap labels to promote ecstasy. And so that's just one other case of, drugs as weapons against us.
Yeah, very interesting, because ecstasy does get great press,
Yeah.
Yeah, like it's the harmless drug. It's not addictive. Oh, it's the love drug, And and also back to the Wu Tang Clan. I could tell you a couple of stories about that.
They instantly fired him when they read that article.
Really?
Yeah, of course, yeah. Yeah, and they were actually very politically connected. Their producer was Sonny Carson.
Oh, really?
He's a Black Liberation Movement leader. And ODB, one of the lead singers, his brother was a serious activist, was a co-producer with Sonny Carson. And, as I said, Sonny Carson was revered in the Brooklyn black community as a Black Liberation leader.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, Sonny Carson's okay. Another guy I knew, though, that worked for Wu-Tang had a long history of being a police informant. And I personally know this. And that also, too, I believe he was killed just recently in the past couple of years. I've been trying to track him down.
Really?
But also too, Method Man. Now listen to this, interesting story. Method Man came to my business in Staten Island, and the only ID card that he had on him, the only ID was an ID card as being a patient from South Beach Psychiatric Center. So this guy, yeah, he was somehow released from there or something, and that was the only ID card that he had on him.
I don't know what to make of that.
I don't know either. But it just goes to show you the amount of infiltration.
Yeah.
From all angles and all different levels, you know, like even a little guy that's in there just doing their T-shirts and stuff like that. It is a long time, well-known Staten Island informant, you know, but managed to whirl his way in there. What do you make along the same pattern? What do you make of Al Sharpton and his whole business with being an FBI and being involved in allegedly negotiating some coke deals and stuff?
I don't know. I can't say I know that much about Sharpton. I'm sorry to say.
Okay. Yeah, I just did a big show about him as well with his FBI connections because he worked undercover for the FBI for a very long time. During that whole period of time with the whole Tawana Brawley thing was going on, he was making... You can look it up on the Smoking Gun. Well, the FBI docs are there.
Well, the only problem with that is... I heard some of that, and I can believe some of that. But the Tawana Brawley case, I was living in Brooklyn around the time, like right after that, some of that stuff happened, and when the trial was going on, and so I think it was called Our Time Press, which was a small black press, a newspaper in Brooklyn. They interviewed a black police detective who sat in on the whole trial, and he just went over the whole trial verbatim, gave all the evidence that was presented at that trial. And that it turns out that that was a very high level sexual assault and cover up, according to his testimony of what went on, what was uncovered at that trial involving Tawana Brawley. I mean, those people that did that to her were very well connected. They were very high level, and when one of them was threatened, when one of them was ID'd and threatened to tell on the others, he was shot and killed.
Right. Yeah, I'm very familiar. I talk about all that.
Good.
Yeah. Very familiar with that case. But who was the handler? You know.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah. So right,
because the case went nowhere, you know. And Sharpton was working for the FBI. Sharpton was working seriously for the FBI. He had a phone installed in his home that was only to be used for FBI setups and deals. And many cases against organized crime were made due to Sharpton's undercover work for the FBI. This guy was working from the time he got up, all day long for the FBI during that period of time.
I didn't know it was that extensive. I heard about some of his work, but I didn't know it got that extensive.
Yeah, you got to go in there because it's played down, you know. But you got to go in there, and all the docs are on there on the Smoking Gun. They did a great job on this. They won't come on the show for some reason and talk about it, like a lot of people don't want to talk about it. And also the Village Voice did a whole bunch of a series of great articles too about Sharpton, about how the GOP controlled his whole campaign. And do you know that Sharpton was responsible for bringing Coretta Scott King to the Bush Republican National Convention?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and it was a payoff because he endorsed Pataki, he endorsed D'Amato. Sharpton's a real character, man. This guy.
I had no idea.
Yeah, how is he? Oh, yeah, the Village Voice. There's a series of Village Voice articles on Sharpton. And then the Smoking Gun investigation on Sharpton is just great work. But I can't get any of those people to come on the show and talk about it.
Yeah, it's too bad.
It is, because I think that needs to be exposed. But I totally agree with you about Tawana. That there's a lot more went on there that was covered up because even the man who won the lawsuit, the defamation lawsuit, his girlfriend was an FBI agent who interviewed Tawana.
Mm.
Yeah, ton of stuff in that case.
Yeah, it's amazing. I didn't know what to believe about Tawana Brawley at the time until I read all that evidence. But when Spike Lee, said in his movie "Do the Right Thing," he had a graffiti on the wall saying "Tawana told the truth," and I thought, well, maybe there's more to it. but I didn't know until I read all that evidence, as I said.
You know, interesting too. With the man who was selling the Lucy cigarettes in Staten Island that got choked to death.
Eric Garner, yeah.
Eric Garner. Okay. There are other videos of that murder that are in circulation.
Mm-hmm.
And Spike Lee has those videos. He has them in his possession. And I tried to get them from him. And first they said they would send them to me. Then they wanted this whole shenanigans. I had to go send them a fax and all that kind of stuff back and forth with them. They won't release it to me. But there are long, there's 5 other videos of that murder.
Oh, God.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, my God. Oh, and what do you have about the Occupy? Oh, there's a whole bunch of stuff in here, man. The Young Lords, which was the Geraldo Rivera group, Latin Kings, which was King Tone, and Occupy Movement. What do you have on those stories?
Yeah, well, the Young Lords were the Latino version of the Black Panthers. And, Geraldo Rivera was doing, I don't know what he was doing in them, but they were basically doing real good activist work in the Latino community. The person who founded the Young Lords, Jose Cha-Cha Jimenez, actually was sent to shadow Bobby Seale for a month to learn everything he did and to learn how to, found the same kind of activist group in, amongst the Latino community. And so they were doing great activist work for a while before he was framed on marijuana possession charges, and they used other means to take them down with drugs. But they stayed active, a lot of them, and they some of them, like Vincent Panama Alba, who I talked to in New York, influenced King Tone of the Latin Kings to lead the whole group to give up drug dealing and turn into activists. And a Columbia University Press book, published book, just documents the conversion of the Latin Kings into activism and how 3,000 of them gave up drug dealing and gave up any kind of criminal behavior to do that. But then I show evidence King Tone was actually framed for continuing conspiracy to deal drugs after that. But that was a huge thing against U.S. intelligence, because when it was part of the Black Panther, movement to get the Bloods and Crips to call peace truces and stop and turn into activists that happened in California and spread across the country. And Tupac Shakur was part of that. And so that was a reason that U.S. intelligence and the CIA particularly targeted Tupac, was that Tupac and his Black Panther extended family were costing them billions of dollars in lost revenue from the drugs and lost revenue in the money laundering, which props up stock values. Yeah. And so that I just show there's some intricacies which I can't go into detail on right now. You can see in the book of how that works with money laundering and the propping of stock values, but it's that showed a reason why the CIA would take particular notice of what Tupac was doing to get rid of him. But I argue that they first tried to manipulate Tupac with Death Row Records when he said he was going to give up smoking weed because he thought he'd developed an addiction. Death Row fed him weed all the time. And then towards the end of his life, witnesses said that he wasn't drinking or smoking weed at parties for hours when everyone else was drinking and smoking weed. But he was also, of course, getting away from Death Row Records when he was murdered.
Very interesting. King Tone, is he still in prison right now?
No, I think he's out of prison now. I think he finally got out of prison. So I think he's doing some decent activist work now. But I've heard they did everything they possibly could to splinter the Latin Kings and not let him be as effective as he was earlier on before prison.
Yeah, I believe they're totally destroyed at this point.
It's possible.
But also too, the charges against him in that drug conspiracy was that he was providing security outside of a hotel dorm room. And there was a drug deal going on inside the hotel dorm room, where that kind of stuff goes on all the time. Man, with all professional Pinkertons do that kind of stuff, and no one gets charged. Gets the kind of charges he got in that case.
Yeah, it's interesting. I haven't heard that much detail that you just heard, because I talked to him before he got framed and sent back to jail.
Oh, really?
But after he got framed and sent back to jail, I talked to one of his mentors, but I didn't get every little detail of how they framed him. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to get him on the show, man. That's a guy with a real life, you know?
Yeah, it would be interesting. There's another guy, one of his mentors who I interviewed, talked to back in the mid-'90s. It was Hector Torres. He's a guy you might be able to get on the show, too.
Okay. Yeah. Let's do it, because that deserves a show. The Imperial Latin Kings deserves a show, for sure, to get this stuff on record. Yeah, and the whole Young Lords thing, man, it's funny how so many people came out of there, like Geraldo Rivera.
Yeah, Juan Gonzalez, who's on Democracy Now! And columnist for the New York Daily News. He's been doing pretty good work since then. I think he's a good man, good activist. So he, of course, he's gotten a little more mainstream, but overall, still doing some good work.
Felipe Luciano and Pablo Guzman, both of them, they all came out of there. They all came out of there and got media jobs, if you notice.
Oh yeah, right.
Yeah.
One of them started, I think, the New York Poets Cafe. Is that right?
I'm not sure.
Pretty sure one of them did. Might have been Luciano, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, because I grew up in the Bronx.
Oh, right.
Yeah. Oh, boy. Okay, well, we're coming to the end of our show. We've got about 9 minutes left. If you want to hang out a little longer, you're always welcome.
Yeah, I'd love people to call in and answer and ask questions. But what do you think about Abbie Hoffman and the Yippies? Since you kind of knew some of them. Right?
When I hooked up with the Yippies, Abbie was still on the lam, you might say, right? For a coke deal,
Okay.
And he had his lawyer. It was Gerald F. Court that I've worked with him on other cases.
Yeah, he did good work.
At the time, he was great. You know who he's defending right now? Jeffrey Epstein in this pedo case with this guy Jeffrey Epstein.
That's a shame.
I know.
Yeah.
Because that's let me ask you a question. What lawyer would you turn to today? What lawyers do we have right now today? Civil rights lawyer like Kunstler, like Kuby, like Left Court. We don't have anybody like that anymore.
Well, Michael Tarif Warren was Tupac Shakur's lawyer, and he was the European spokesperson for the Mumia Abu Jamal campaign. I talked to him a few years ago last, and I know he was sick, but I think he sounded healthy enough. So I don't, he's one, but Choku Lumumba was a great, I'd say was the national lawyer for Tupac and was the head of the New African People's Organization. He won that Merrill, campaign in Jackson, Mississippi, and was actually beloved in Jackson before he died just a year or so ago. But I don't know if the other lawyers out there. I agree.
But back to Abbie Hoffman, you're right. At the end of his life, he was struggling with drugs.
Was he? Because I thought actually that he gotten clean and sober, and he wrote that book, Steal This Urine Test.
I don't know what the timing of that book is, but I know when he came to do I saw it in my own eyes, when he was doing appearances for a New York Public Interest Research Group, the NIPERG, the environmental group. Yeah, he was out of it. He was.
That's too bad.
Yeah, and in public, right in front of him, doing snorting stuff right in front of us.
Well, his first hit of acid came from an MK Ultra scientist.
Really?
Yeah, and at that point they said, one biographer said, Abbie Hoffman hadn't even smoked weed at that point. He was married, he had kids. Him and his wife were both very serious activists doing great work up in Massachusetts. And this MK Ultra scientist got him using acid, and his wife couldn't take all his drug use after that, and kind of divorced him. Then he moved. Actually, I think, I don't know if she divorced him first or he left her first, but he left his wife and kids in Massachusetts, moves down to the village, New York City, and starts the Yippies. But I think he was manipulated from then on. I think he did some good activist work, but he was also somewhat manipulated to promote acid because that levitating the Pentagon was, of course, ridiculous, and it was funded by the Mellon Hitchcocks, who funded Leary's group. So I think he was manipulated, and then when he sobered up a little bit, they watched him a little more closely, and it's just a shame.
Yeah, it is. But what do? You want to organize. You want to be an activist. You need funding. And money comes in. At first you say, okay, fine, the money's coming in. But you don't question. And then before you know it, you're being maneuvered.
Well, it's one thing, it's one thing where you get the money from, and it's another thing what you do with the money. So to hold a protest about levitating the Pentagon is just ridiculous. It's just, one of those kind of absurd things. And no, he did some good stuff in terms of like the dropping the cash in Wall Street. That was a good theatrical gesture, kind of like theater protest type stuff.
Yeah.
And it's fine, street theater stuff. But it's just like the promoting acid all over the place. He was just such a huge promoter of acid, and the Yippies were so infiltrated.
Yeah,
there were so many undercover agents. George Demerly with his Crazies group, and Bob Pearson was a bodyguard for the one of the other top Yippies. I forgot his name off the top of my head, but it's just there was a lot of undercover agents in the Yippies, and I think they were manipulating Hoffman and his partners a bit.
Yeah, it really is fascinating to see how much infiltration there is. Mm-hmm. And even on one occasion, I told the story before, this one guy was accused of being a KGB agent. And then when I talked to him about it later on, he admitted to me, he did get funding from the Russian embassy.
Really?
Yeah. And he said it was for his poetry. they sent him a stipend for his poetry. That's what he told me. I know. But the thing is, there's so many double agents.
Yeah,
and informants and people with open cases that
Yeah, but I do want people to understand when I talk about them manipulating, these people that were using acid. In the government documents, they say that that's one of their goals is to use LSD to manipulate people. So as they can tell, they think that once they're using it, once people use acid, it's more easy to manipulate them.
Oh, really?
So, yeah.
Yeah, that's probably true. And it's amazing. There's so many people today in the truth movement or the awake community, whatever it is you want to call it, promote acid and promote marijuana.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the weed, I don't, I'm not as, I don't have as strong of an opinion about, but the acid, it's a real shame because if they're in there in the truth community promoting acid, they're doing MK Ultra work, really.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's really, as far as there can be no benefit.
You know it or not. I mean, they probably don't know it. They're doing MK Ultra work, but some may know it, and some may just may not know it.
But the other thing too is that they may not know it, but if they're just moseying along here and they can smoke pot all day long and drop acid all day long, they don't have to work. Somehow their funding comes in from somewhere.
Exactly.
Because I'm struggling, man.
We're all struggling.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of us, at least, a lot of us activists can't do this for a living, and we can't do this writing for a living.
Yeah.
We have to do other work and do the activism on the side.
Okay, we only got a couple of minutes before we drop Talk Superstation and PSN, but we have another hour on Awake Radio Network all over Europe, and then that goes on YouTube too. By the way, if you're listening on Spreaker, I'm going to drop that Spreaker show and start a new Spreaker show called After Show, so you can pick it up there. But we're with John Potash, the author of Drugs as Weapons Against Us, the CIA's murderous targeting of SDS, Panthers, Hendrix, Lennon, Cobain, Tupac, and other leftists. And his original book, the first book, was the FBI War on Tupac Shakur and Black Leaders, U.S. Intelligence's murderous targeting of Tupac, MLK, Malcolm, Panthers, Hendrix, Marley, rappers, and linked ethnic leftists. So we only got about a minute left. If people want to get a hold of you, to do an interview or buy a book from you directly, an autograph book, what do they do?
Yeah, they can just contact me through my website, john-potash.com. They can, message me, and it comes in my email. I tried to shop the book on there, but I can't really do that just yet. I will be able to do that within a week or so. But they can message me, and I can message them. I can email them back or message them back, just saying, here's how you can buy the book directly from me if you want. But it's available on Amazon.com. It's available, and you can go to Barnes & Noble and order it and get the book within 2 to 4 days to your Barnes & Noble. Hopefully some of the Barnes & Nobles are carrying it, but if they're not carrying it, you can just order it to that store and take a look at it first before you buy it. It's supposed to be sold in Books A Million also, and independent bookstores are hopefully carrying it. We'll see. But Books A Million, it takes a lot longer to order it, they say. Nonetheless, hopefully some of them are carrying it. And, as I say, I support independent bookstores, and I hope they carry it.
Do you have any appearances coming up or any radio shows or anything you do?
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up.
Sure.
And I am appearing at Blue Stockings Bookstore and Cafe in New York City on June 12th at 7 p.m. I'll be showing a short film, 30 to 40 minutes, probably 40 minutes, just kind of like a condensation of what the book's about and all, and just to precede me, talking a little more about the book and doing question and answer. And since we're doing a radio interview in Baltimore with a Morgan State professor who was working for Pacifica Radio for a while. I think he still is, named Jared Ball, good man, who I've done talks with before. So, yeah.
Okay, very cool. We'll be right back with the after show after these messages.